Welcome to the Good Hombres Report. I am your host, Alpha Liberal. The video that you just saw is the devastating neck injury that was making its rounds last week. I wanted to do this quick report because when these videos go viral, I feel like so many things are misreported and we never actually get the details. I first heard from my news hunter, Roger, who sent me the Reddit thread where this video was first posted. The incident was actually being first reported by mostly European sites because that's where it occurred. It was being reported as an MMA fight, which clearly it's not, but that's what news sites do. They sensationalize. MMA fight sounds more interesting than Jiu Jitsu tournament. As you guys can clearly see in the video, it was in fact a Jiu Jitsu tournament. It took place in St. Petersburg, Russia, at the Universal Fighters Open Cup. The name of the young man who suffered the horrific injury is 26-year-old Bayzudin Aliyev. He hails from Dagestan. Now, that name Dagestan, if it sounds familiar to MMA fans out there, it's because that is the area in Russia that UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov is from. Mr. Aliyev's injuries were life-altering to say the least. He was diagnosed with a brain contusion, a closed craniocerebral trauma, and a fracture of the cervical vertebrae with damage to the spinal cord. A fundraiser was held in order to pay for his medical bills. Another misreporting of the incident was that Mr. Aliyev is now quadriplegic. BJJ Mania RU is an Instagram account that reports on the MMA and Jiu-Jitsu scene in Russia. They made an Instagram post giving an update to Aliyev's condition. This is a rough translation of the post. Good news! According to the news station 1TV Dagestan, Mr. Aliyev is now much better. His condition has improved. He has begun to talk. Aliyev is also already breathing on his own. He is glad that he can now also move his arms and legs. So, this is amazing, fantastic news. Mr. Aliyev is not a quadriplegic as reported by most people on Reddit and comment section of the video that's being posted on YouTube. And from one jiu-jitsu practitioner to another, I hope that Mr. Aliyev makes a full and speedy recovery. Hopefully through physical therapy, he can one day step back on the mat and continue to compete in the sport that he loves. Before we end the report, this brings me to another discussion. During the 80s and 90s, we were sold on the mystical power of traditional martial arts. But this promise was something only Hollywood movies could deliver. The things that actually really worked when put to the test: boxing, wrestling, Muay Thai, and of course, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. One of the patriarchs of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the great Helio Gracie. What enamored me about BJJ was its focus on technique over strength. The original intent was always for what was the most effective in a real fight scenario when you are the smaller man. Unlike the other styles which have become pillars of MMA, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is unique as to how powerful one can become with just technique alone. I have friends of mine who are black belts but 30 to 40 pounds lighter than me who could rip my arms out and choke me into unconscious oblivion within minutes of sparring. BJJ is as close to a superpower as one can get in the martial arts world. It has grown tremendously since the early days of the UFC when it was only style versus style. The MMA athlete of today is now at the maximal amalgamation of skills that one can hope to achieve. MMA is now its own style. However, with popularity came the rules and regulations. Sportification is an inevitability for any combat sport to survive and eventually thrive. In this new controlled environment, what works and doesn't work changes completely. Varying moves and techniques have evolved that will win matches in a mat, but would be counterintuitive, if not fatal, in a real fight scenario. One of those moves is the flying armbar, which is what Mr. Aliyev was attempting in this video. Imagine if, God forbid, this was in a concrete rather than a wrestling mat. The end result would most likely have been fatal for Mr. Aliyev. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for close to 13 years now. My competitive MMA fighting days are well behind me, but I still train because I love the sport. It is no longer something I do, it is a part of who I am. With that said, I also train because I want to be confident in knowing that if there ever is a situation where physical confrontation is unavoidable, I know that I can either neutralize the threat or have the skills to buy the time to make an escape. The butt scoot, turtle guard, jumping into guard. These are just some techniques off the top of my head that I believe would be a mistake to make in a real fight scenario. Hence, when I spar, I try my best to not make it a habit of including it into my game. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those guys that's going to complain. These are techniques that have grown because of the sport. I absolutely love the skill and mastery required to use these moves in a sports match. But for my own personal growth as a BJJ practitioner, I don't utilize it. So, to my fellow BJJ brothers out there, what are your thoughts on the ever-evolving sport of Jiu-Jitsu? And has the sportification of Jiu-Jitsu actually caused it to regress in terms of its purpose and intent? Let me know by leaving it down in the comment section below. This is the Alpha Liberal. Thank you for watching. Peace out.